Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, we recently spoke with the director of the Africa Film Fest, Asha Lovelace, and she cited Naveed Lancaster in glowing terms. Now, this musician, music producer, and the owner of Lancaster is a musician, and he is doing things that we need to hear more about for more than one reason. We're very glad that he was able to make the time for us to have this conversation. And it is really our pleasure to have you on at this point in time. Now, there's so many things that I didn't even list the full description. So how do you make sense of your day-to-day in terms of what it is you describe yourself as and what your workflow might be from one day to another?
I basically tell people that I compose the emotions for award-winning films, video games, mobile applications, and animation. So that is basically what I do. In fact, I basically make noise whole day. It's one of those jobs that I'm grateful that my heart followed to and followed through, and it's to the service of the clientele.
And I really want to dive down that rabbit hole, even past saying that you're making noise whole day. Now,
Yeah.
on one platform, I saw create music for film, animation, video games, mobile application. Another one, I got the description that you just use, you create the emotion. Create that,
Yes.
make that distinction for me. Explain that, thank you.
When people listen to music, they listen to music for a specific reason, whether it's to get rid of a bad emotion, to feel elated, to bring back a memory, to basically get through the day as a stress reliever. On my side, especially when it deals with film, I am the person who provides the text and the subtext to the visuals in service of the story. So basically, what I am a storyteller. So when a person watches a film or has an experience with a mobile app or anything dealing with digital media, my creations help uh, propel the story along, get them immersed in the story or the experience. And basically, what I am doing is having, as a person said, putting the sprinkles on top of the cake, basically.
Does that give you or does that open the window for the potential to have a bit of a God complex in terms of like, I am creating something that I want you to feel. So, and knowing that you're doing so intentionally.
That's a very good question. And the answer is no. Basically, what I tell my when I give lectures and podcasts and stuff like that, I tell people that and that you are basically helping the director. The story isn't yours, the concept isn't yours. And in a business sense, if you get a God complex, you would not be hired because it's a collaborative effort. It is one of those professions where you really have to be a team player. You know, if it's my own albums or my own works, not a problem. I could be as God complex as I like. But when I'm working with people creating a product, which is a story or an experience, I I have to be a team player and follow the instructions of the director.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, please, in the sense that yes, so a little less from being a team player, more onto your own projects, music and albums. How did you get into, I want to say the industry, but I'm not sure I want to say the industry. So
Understood.
give me some signposts along your journey thus far, thank you.
Well, to make a long story short, because I've been doing this for about 30 years, the first 20 years was basically a case of I was in a band called AK-47 for 2 years playing guitar. We did reggae, back in time, soca, calypso. And then I formed my own band with a few friends of mine called Broken Mirrors, where we played, and yes, I do not look like it, metal, speed metal, that kind of thing. And then during that time, I got interested in computers, and this is back in the day. And to show how back in the day it is, I'm talking about typing in DOS, monochrome screen kind of thing. I got into computers, and I quickly realized there's a chain that you could latch everything onto. So while I was working as an assistant secretary at the National Buy Center when I was in my very late teens, early 20s, I saw Kenny Phillips on TV, and he was talking about music production. Of course, I was into music and still am. So I called the station and they said he left and they gave me his number. So I called him and he said, and I quote, "If you really want to learn this industry, you have to leave your job." So I quit my job. It's one of those things where you have to take risks to get what you want. So of course, when I was there, I spent 3 months there by Kenny Phillips. And I learned the hard way, the school of hard knocks, meaning that I was now going into a Windows environment where my previous job was, dropped in myself into a Macintosh environment with two paying clients and the clock ticking. And I had to create something on on pieces of software which I never used before. That is how I learned. So of course I made many mistakes. In fact, I made so many mistakes. And that was just before Carnival picked up. So all these soca artists were coming in by him. So I got, I was a gopher. So I got buff and cussed by everybody because I wasn't fast enough on the ball. But I learned the hard way, left there, went to work at a Proden. That's a studio in St. James. Worked there for a short while and then spent 6 years in Spectacular Promotions. Uh, Basically recording artists, producing artists, mainly Calypsonians, and did a ton of commercials. So that's why I cut my teeth every day. And you will see the logical line from playing music to playing music with computers. I left Spectacular, worked in UTT for about 4 years in the music technology department. So we were training future music producers, maintaining the music labs, recording Panorama. So I did a lot of live recordings for Panorama. And then one day, and this is where the film comes in, one day I was at a live show managing the sound, and this guy just walked in with a camera, and his name was Stephen Taylor, who right now, obviously he's smiling, so you know who Stephen Taylor is. For those who don't know, right now he's on the set of Bad Boys 4 with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence with his wife, Reem Taylor, and they're doing wonderful stuff across there. So that's the next person that I would love for you to interview. Um, but I met him and he said, "Hi, my name is Stephen. I'm Navid." I gave him a makeshift card, which I had at the time. And a few months later, he called and he said, "I'm doing a film called Buck the Man Spirit. Do you want to compose for it?" I said, "Yeah, cool." I mean, to me, it's just a matter of attaching video now to what I've already known. And so happens that film ended up winning the 2012 People's Choice Award at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. And it was so successful that we actually had to sell extra shows, extra screenings for the film festival. The next year, I composed the soundtrack for a film called Jab in the Dark, which also won. So I'm seeing a trend here, and I said, okay, this sounds like a plan. So I started marketing myself now as a film composer. And from then on, things started to happen. So I've been involved in a few award-winning films. Uh, Met a wonderful person called Anthony Phils. He's a Trinidadian living in the States. We hit it off one time when he came here for an animation conference. And we've now been, for the past, since 2013 actually, we've been putting out groundbreaking products. And the biggest one so far is what we did, this mobile app for iOS called Unbreakable, which deals with the last slave ship that came to the United States. and it's free on iOS, and we have won multiple awards for that app.
And there are a few things that I want to go back in for us to speak to incrementally, and we'll do
Yeah.
that when we return from this break. We are speaking with Naveed Lancaster. I see that we're going to run out of time on this one.
On time.
I might
Yeah.
not try to Oliver Twist it, but at the same time, stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with a musician, film composer, so much more, Naveed Lancaster. And there were three things that you said that really spoke to me in a way that I want to ask you more about them. One, the importance of making mistakes and being vulnerable enough to learn from those mistakes as opposed to cover it up and make it seem as though it wasn't necessarily a mistake. Because I think sometimes when you go through it, you know that you've gone through it, so you're able to do so again, as opposed to sometimes, kind of twilight zone. Well, I think I could, or I should be able to. And that also begs the question of the chicken or the egg experience of having that piece of paper. Reminds me of the 4 years you said you were at UTT. So what is your take on the importance of being able to make those mistakes?
Oh, I am from the old school, as I had mentioned before. I believe in those mistakes. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's hard. And yes, it's very, very harsh. But once you go through it, you get to you know the problem and the situations or situations like that intimately. So they won't scare you as much, or sometimes they won't even scare you at all because you went through that process. So when other situations or even bigger situations come, you can look back and say, hey, I handled this or something like this already, or something similar to this. Or even if it's not even similar, just you handle a problem and you went through it, you can also get through this. So it gives you, for want of a better word, a broad back or thicker skin to withstand whatever else is coming. And I must point out that in the film industry and music industry, you get a lot of that in terms of being burnt. So as I told a few people a couple of days ago, the younger people, I told them straight, you will get burned, but I'm here to mitigate the burn, so you won't get burnt as much because I'm seeing where they're going. I'm saying no, if you do that or that, this is going to happen. You'll be taken advantage of. You'll be robbed of your song. You have to do certain things and protect yourself because I went through that experience myself.
Reminds me of somebody talking about failing or falling forward.
Fast, yeah.
You do it in a way where you're able to rebound from that quickly and move ahead. And that kind of goes in line with the way that you said, yes, you're from the old school. Yes, you were able to say, okay, well, this makes sense. So I am going to quit my job. But I want to speak to the significance of somebody like Stephen M. Taylor saying, will you do this? Because sometimes it seems as though there's so many doors that are closed. There are little chinks that you can't even put your big toe through. So I don't know if it's trust. I don't know if he didn't have the resources to check somebody else. But how significant was it that Stephen Taylor was able to reach out to you to ask you to do this? Nothing that you've done before, but at the same time, being able to reach out to you like that.
To me, it's a very, well, as I say, when you looking back is 2020. Yeah. For me, it was very logical in terms of connecting the dots. I do computers, I do music, video, just adding that inside the computers, and you just marry the music to it. To me, in my mind, that's how it works. The process of how to get it right, that's a whole nother story. That's pain and learning. But the general idea made sense to me. The fantastic thing about that chance meeting, because it was a chance meeting, because he could have gone to anybody else, but this was his capstone film, was graduating from the UE film program. And I think just because he came in to record a show and he saw me in front, behind the boards, mixing music, he said, okay, that guy looks like he knows what he's doing. Let me give him a call. And also it's a case of taking chances because I am one of those people who is very bold-faced in terms of marketing myself. I see no shame in doing that. I tell people that marketing itself is like a bright blinking light in a dark room. You know, you have to bring attention to yourself. So when I saw Steve on that camera, I just walked up and as I had mentioned before, I didn't have business cards. I made a homemade business card and gave it to him. You know, you have to be able to take chances, and especially in the arts. You know, and from then on, it has we have been growing from strength to strength, this particular relationship. And I heard you talk about trust just now. It is something above trust. And it's a trust that you have to nurture and grow. He and I are in communication all the time, even up to today. When he was in the USC, University of Southern California, doing his works, he was sending me these stuff here for me to do the music for him to pass his exams. That's the kind of relationship you want to build. And I have had these relationships with various people in various industries. It's always a trust thing. The skills, you can learn that stuff off of YouTube, but it's building relationships. That's for me, that's the most important thing.
And like the fact that you say that for me, I want to go back to you specifically. How do you go about creating? Because you've used the word logic and logical more than once. So it seems as though in terms of being detail oriented, looking and seeing that increments follow, is it sometimes a bit of a pull and tug between art and science with regard to how it is you create and your process to do so?
Very good question. To me, it's one and the same. When I'm in creative mode, let's go bring back some memories. When I was working in studio work, I used to be what you call a studio rat. I love staying in recording studios. So they had this running joke, you know, I would go in a studio, stay for 3 days. The music will be fantastic. The studio will smell different, yes, but the music will be fantastic. Um, for me, it's technology is just a tool, nothing more, nothing less. It's just an aid for what's going on in my brain. Uh, a lot of film composers, for example, they start from zero and they go straight to film composing. And the music, as far as I could hear, sounds basically the same. You know why one thing go to the next, you know the tones they're going to use. Um, but I come from a music producer background. That was most of my adult life in music production. So I had to, besides learn different techniques, listen to a lot of music. Yes, I'm a rock man through and through, but I had to listen to a lot of music from different genres, different times, different ages. And that knowledge you use to incorporate into your works. So, and once that happens and I get into a flow, the tools are just there to just let it go out. Yeah, so for me, it's not a art and science separate. It's one and the same for me.
Well, the technology of some that is so far advanced that people can't understand, other people can't understand it, they might call it magic. So I take your point. But how does that play out when you are trying to create emotion for an app, something that may be forward thinking, that may be outside of the realm of something that you have envisioned so far? How do you go about doing that?
I look, and it will be same as film. I look at the content, what the content is trying to say, and then of course, most importantly, what the director wants the audience to feel. Once I have that kind of conversation, and that conversation could go from, depending how I speak with a very technical person talking about frame rates and, you know, at this particular frame, at this particular second, I want to hear this, to a director saying, I want something to sound more orange. So you got that kind of thing, that, yeah. And my job is to interpret that, you know? And yes, sometimes it's trial and error, and sometimes it has failures in the past. Actually, this one is a recent past. um, uh, the director, a real cool person from England. and myself, we had a 3-hour long talk about his work. We understood each other. But when we started to implement, and he wanted changes, and he wasn't saying exactly what I think he was saying, and I was giving him stuff, and he wasn't quite getting it. We ended amicably, but sometimes even that fails. That's the reality of it. You could reach so far as having the in-depth discussions, and he trusts you. And then when you start to produce, things don't quite match up. But the thing is, as I said, it's relationships. We didn't end on, you're not good, and you're not good director, you're not good composer, and then we just do that. No, we ended very amicably. And we look forward to work again, in the future.
And we have about a minute and a half, Mr. Lancaster, and I want to ask, what would you tell individuals who are thinking of getting into one of the aspects of what you're doing, especially when we're in a space when you hear music, people don't necessarily, there are a lot of parameters that we like to put around ourselves, be it
Correct.
the way that you would have said you wouldn't know to look at it, but I'm a rock man. Or some people say that it's soca or bust, or even doing different types of music, but limiting our minds within our shores of the Caribbean. What do you tell a person like that?
I've had this experience, and I'm sure many people in the arts, not just music, had this experience, where people, well-meaning or not, have told you, "You sure you want to do this? Sure you want to do this just as a hobby? You want to get a real job?" That kind of thing. That's the reality we live in a Caribbean society where the doctors and lawyers are lorded over the artists. A quick side note, because I know we only have a minute and a half. When the pandemic happened, who do you think everybody turned to? The artists, or else we would have gone crazy. The arts have value, not just financial value, but also intrinsic and emotional value. So anybody who wants to get into this, know a couple things. One, it's going to be a hard life for a while because of the environment we're living in. But if you stick with it, you will succeed. And I'm not saying this as a florally woo-woo kind of scenario. This is the reality. It's almost like a last man standing scenario. But if you really, really, really want to do this, you will be tested, but all you have to do is just keep following your course, and the right people will come to you.
And with that, we want to thank you so much, Naveed Lancaster.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.